So the same drill. I'm recording the session, and in an event that my audio will not be that good, feel free to inform me. So we'll start with data entry, and I say with data entry, we'll use a command input, and we're using this Stata data entry form so that I don't have to create some survey or some information out of nowhere. So we're going to code this question whereby the variable will be ID, age, language, marital status, smoker, and medication. If you look at ID, comprises of both a string and a number. So we normally call this as a complex, but in this case we'll just code it as string. So I'll go to my software and input the variable name is ID. Since ID deduce str, and I'm using 30 for emphasis, so we're getting ID to be a string variable that will accommodate up to 30 characters. For age, it's a continuous variable. As you can see, we're having the exact age of the respondent or the ID, so I don't have to indicate. For language, I will also code it as numeric so that we label the values French and German together with Spanish. We assign the respective values to them. So after age, we'll have language, marital status. So when you're creating variable name, we said you cannot have spaces. As you can see on my end, I'm using an underscore for marital status. I'll do the same for smoker. And lastly, medication. I will press enter. And if you check on your variable view section, you should be having your variables. The next thing is now data entry, because between the time you're coding your variables and when you enter the observation, there's nothing you can do in between. So the first response is K1 to 9. So I'll start with K1 space, age is 29 space. So I'll have French. I will assign a value of 1 to represent French, value of 2 for German, value of 3 for Spanish. So So for the first respondent, I will have 1. I will also do the same for single. And then 2 for married, and 3 for divorce. So for the first guy, I will assign 1. For smoker, I'll say 1 for yes, and 0 for no. So that is binary. Of course, that's how you'll be identifying elements. So start getting comfortable with the use of binary, whereby 1 denotes yes and 0 denotes no. So for smoker, I'll say 1. So there's a space between every response. Then lastly, for medication is 16. So K2 is the second respondent. So we're not going to have all of them. Let's just pick the 3 for purpose of demonstration. 36. In case you have any question, you can write on the comment section. I'll review them towards the end of the class. So let's just do for the 3 response. So we can do something else. So once you're done with data entry, said you must introduce a code which denotes that you're no longer doing data entry, but instead you want to use other function. So if you write and, now you have a chance to even view your data. So let's talk about edit and browse. So if you write browse, realize you'll be able to see the back end of how your data looks like. And if you don't want to write browse in full, if you just write br, so just close br, realize you'll achieve the same results. So what it means here is will be there for you, as long as the syntax is correct. So let's look at edit. And the difference between edit and browse is with the use of edit, you can be able now to make changes to your database. So I can add a fourth person. I'm just going to generate some entries there. I can say 27. So let's talk about label. So before you go to label, you can see that as we were working on the back end, there's some codes that are being generated on the front end. So it's the same thing as we were keying in these observations, the same information are being recorded at the back end. So that is for those who would wish maybe to use point and click. So as much as we are saying Stata is meant for, like, you can use codes, you can also point and click and get the same results. It's just that the most professional, they find it tiresome to keep looking for where to go to in order to perform some analysis. But I'll try as much as possible in this class to combine both the use of codes and also to locate how to use some of the functions here. So let's label the variable. And if you recall in your SPSS class, you're told that the role of label is to give more information about the variable name. So in an event that maybe you're working with a team, or the person who was doing data entry is not the person who's going to do data management. So there should be a smooth transition on how to identify the variables, and label always come in handy for that. So you can use the command label variable, and which variable are you labeling? So go and pick ID from the list of variable up here. So if you take your cursor and point to the variable name, you will see an arrow. And if you click on that arrow, the name of the variable will come down here. So that's the best way to avoid maybe missing out on some characters in a variable name. So it's always good to use the arrow, but not to write the name of the variable. So you're labeling variable ID to be, let's say, identity number. And identity number should be enclosed in a speech box because it's a text. Press enter. And if you look at your variable view, you will see that under label you have identity number. Let's do the same for all the variables up to medication. So age will be age in years. And remember we said at some point you can just write a code up to where you want to execute. So instead of writing variable, I can just write var. So, and pay attention to the spelling of label. I'm labeling variable age. I'll pick age using the arrow. Introduce stretch marks, and I'll have it as age in years. Language I will have as preferred language. For marital status, I'll just label it as marital status. I think there's nothing much you can do there. Label variable marital status, speech marks. So as long as you have the speech marks in place, when labeling a variable, you don't have to separate the characters. So you can have spaces just like the way we're doing it with the spaces. For smoker, I think it's just smoker. Medication, I think you can label it as number of medication. I think you're good to go with label. So if you browse, I think the next thing into is German. So to label the values, we'll have behind two function. One, to use the function, so we said the first command is label define, and you're defining which variable, language, and in language we said, so there's a space, we said in language one is French, so say one French, two German, I think those are the two. I'll execute that. So as long as you're not getting any errors, on your review window, then you know you're in the right track. So we said label define, and then the second function we'll use is label value. And with label value, we're just saying language. So what it means here is we don't want to make changes to the variable name language. So we're just saying let language remain to be language. I'll execute that, and if I browse, now you can tell that I have language, but now I have a value that have not been labeled. So maybe I give you, or I leave you with this as your homework. Go and find out how you can label these three, or a value that when you are defining your variable sets, you didn't define that category. So let me do for marital status. And we said you're using two functions back to back. So label define, and this time you're defining marital status, whereby one denotes someone who's single, two married, then three divorced. I will label value marital status, marital status. If I execute that, then browse, I can tell that marital status, now I can be able to identify the values. Let's finalize with smoker. Label define, the variable is smoker, and in smoker the value of 1 is yes, value of 0 is not a smoker. Label value smoker, smoker. Now let's talk about do files and how you can be able to share your codes. So if you go to this window, there's a window, just point at, yes, Sabre, you have a question?
Yes, Malimo. Why do we repeat when we are labeling a value? For example, we said label value smoker and smoker 2 times.
So what you're saying here is you're trying to define. So to define is to tell your software something new. So you're introducing a variable called smoker. So you're saying I'm defining variable smoker. And then you're also going ahead and say in this variable where you'll see 1, right there yes, where you're seeing 0, right there no. So it's like the opposite of what we're doing with the recording in SPSS. So instead of us converting a string to numeric, we already have a numeric, we're just labeling it. But with the second code, what it means is the software wants to know what should we do with the variable name. And here we're saying the variable name smoker, let it just remain to be smoker. That's why we're doing it twice, like we're not making changes to the variable name. I hope I've answered you.
Yes, Malimu. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about codes or how to save your work. And remember I said you will never find anyone doing what you're doing right now because it's more tiresome to do data entry in Stata than the alternative. So you realize most people use the strength of Stata, which is now management and analysis, but not data entry. Okay, but for the sake of learning, we're just showing you how to move around. So you can also use syntax, and it's good you familiarize yourself with languages or how uh, these analyses are done, because we now have integration. I think some few days there was that part whereby now we're even using SPSS, you can be able to write Python codes. Now, with this integration, you don't want to be left behind. So if you say you are an expert of Stata, then you should know how you can convert maybe Stata codes to other languages. The same way we introduce syntax file in SPSS, you should also know how to adjust those kind of codes. So if you come here, there's an option of do file. And with do file, this is where you can have codes. And by definition, we can say codes are instruction that your system can be able to read and understand. And codes comprises of two things. It can either be a comment or a command. And the only way your software will know the difference between a comment and a command is in Stata we use star. So if you write the triple star in your do file, it will be green in color. And that is when you can introduce the name or a comment. So what are comments? Comments are instructions that your software can be able to read and understand because it's a code, but you're not going to get any error, but instead you're not going to receive any output. Okay, I hope with that introduction you should now be okay with when we talk about code or coding. So I'm introducing the name of our class. So we can say Stata class January 2023. And
Hello, Malimu.
if you have, if you have a question, Abdallah?
Yeah, I have a question. Before we save our work, Malimu, if we get error, how we can, for example, how we can delete or we can go back?
Uh, so when you get error, like I said, you will have to go to the review window, and you, of course, you'll be able to see that line of code red in color. And then just click on it. If you click on that code, the same code will be displayed down here on the command section. make the necessary adjustment, and execute your code, you realize you should be good to go.
Okay, understand.
So I was at the do file, and they said it's data class January 2023. We're doing data entry. And now I want to paste all the codes that I use. So just click on the first code that you have. For Abdallah, now that you have some codes that are not working, you should not copy that into your do file. So just right click in any of that line of code, and you should be able to delete. So delete any code that is having some syntax issues. And if you're all good, just click on the first line of code. So we're selecting all the codes that are there. I don't know how you use. I think the first approach, you can control A. That means it will be able to select everything. You can also click at the first point, go to the last point, but don't click. Press shift down, and then now you can click. You realize you'll be able to select that part. Of course, there are several ways you can use to select some items. So whichever works for you, you should be good to go. I will copy and then go to my do file and paste. Of course, you can edit your do file. So something like browse, you don't need to be having it every time. Just remove that part of browse. Doesn't make sense to have that code. So if you're sending this file to somebody else, what you want them to do is to receive all the analysis that you've done, but not for them to. So the reason why you're doing browsing and editing was just meant to confirm that whatever you're doing is correct. So you can remove all the browse and edit. Then go to file, save as. You can call it data entry. Remember not to have space. And then your name. So if your name is Sabre, I will write there Sabre. Save your do file, and I would want you to send your do file to me. I will only know what we are in the same page after I execute your codes. Now, that's the first instance of data entry. And this is for primary source. So just in case you had a form and you're moving around collecting data, then that is what you should be doing. Now, the second one is when you're dealing with secondary data, and I believe now this is where Stata will be useful. And we will have to see how do you import an Excel file into Stata. I think I'll try to show you 2 or 3 ways to do that. So in an event that you're analyzing some data from World Bank or IMF, of course, you'll download that data as an Excel spreadsheet. And for you to make sense with Stata, now, I think I'll do that tomorrow. Let's start with that tomorrow. And this is so because I'll be using the files. So there are two Excel files that are shared. Email. So of course, the same files are this, you can access them at the download training material that is in your desktop. But the file that I want you to have is data 2. I think there's data. Okay, make sure you download those files either from the email or from the folder you already have it. When you, of course, the folder that was used for installation of software. Go and also read on the notes. There's some questions on theory, because the only way you can challenge me in class, or we can make this class to be more useful, is if you now do your part, which is review the theoretical part of it, and then in class here now, my job is to introduce the practical part of it. I hope we are now on the same page. So go and read the notes on econometrics, on theoretical, especially on regression, and so forth. So review all this, and then I wish, I don't know if it's okay with you guys, but we can have a makeup class tomorrow so that we can finish up on Stata. So I don't want to impose this on you. For those who want, or those who can be able to attend a makeup class tomorrow, same time, you can vote right on the comment section. For those who will not be able to make it, also write on the comment section. If you have any question, also feel free to ask.
Mwalimu. Hello. Hello, Mwalimu.
Yes, I can hear you, Abdallah.
Mwalimu, quick question. Mwalimu, if we compare between SBS and Stata, SBS looks a lot easier. This one is somehow complicated. So my question is, why would you choose SBS? Why would you choose Stata over SBS? What's the main difference between them?
I think first it's preference. There's as much as you're finding maybe Stata to be a bit technical, or as you're saying you prefer SPSS on your side, there's someone else who will say, I hate moving around trying to do analysis. I just want to write codes and I'm good to go. So one, different people have different preference. The same way there's a guy who is into Mercedes, there's one who is into BMW. So that is one factor. Two, in terms of economics, I don't know mostly my audience, but if you're into the field of economics, then Stata is your software to go to, because now you can find a lot of models that are more into econometrics. So for SPSS, we can say SPSS stands for what? statistical package for social sciences. That means it's a generalized platform. If you're doing psychology, you'll understand you only do statistics 1 and 2. But for someone who's doing, let's say, economics, they go deeper into statistical concepts. So a psychologist can find SPSS more friendly and more efficient compared to Stata, while an economist will find Stata and e-views more efficient compared to SPSS. I think that's how I will respond to that. Okay. I think if there's no one voting, then I will believe we're all saying yes to our makeup class. So let's meet tomorrow, 8:30, and we'll pick from there. Make sure you send your files to me so that I will guide you where necessary. See you all in class tomorrow.
Okay, Mwalimu.